Poland calls it an act of aggression. NATO jets shoot down Russian drones inside Polish airspace. Plus, a deadly strike in Doha. Israel targets Hamas, but the fallout puts the U.S. in the hot seat. And Trump's tariffs now headed to the U.S. Supreme Court. Justices set a date to decide if his biggest economic move is even legal. The stories that matter, clear and credible, from across the country to around the world. These are your unbiased updates from Straight Arrow News. Good morning, I'm Craig DeGrelli. We begin in Poland, where NATO forces have directly engaged Russian targets for the first time in Ukraine since the war began. Poland's military says dozens of drones violated its airspace earlier this morning, calling it an act of aggression. Poland's defense minister said more than 10 objects entered the country, posing a direct threat to national security. NATO Air Command scrambled F-35s from the Dutch Air Force to help shoot them down. The drones were part of Russia's largest barrage against Ukraine, even as President Trump tries to broker a peace deal between Moscow and Kyiv. The European Union is calling this the most serious airspace violation since Russia invaded Ukraine and the war started in February of 2022.
Putin's message is clear, and our response must be clear too. We need more pressure on Russia to come to the negotiation table. We need more sanctions.
Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky wrote on X this morning that more than 24 drones crossed into Poland airspace, saying it was no accident. He's warning the strike set a, quote, extremely dangerous precedent for Europe. A controversial strike by Israel, this time inside Qatar, is sending shockwaves through the region and sparking tension with the United States. Israeli warplanes targeted what leaders called a Hamas meeting site in Doha, just blocks from embassies and schools. The bombing killed several people, including the son of Hamas's chief negotiator and also a Qatari security officer. But the Times of Israel reports this morning there are serious doubts on the success of the strike. Qatar's prime minister condemned the attack, calling it barbaric and a direct attempt to sabotage ceasefire talks backed by President Trump. On Truth Social, Trump said the strike was Benjamin Netanyahu's decision, not his. He added that he directed his special envoy to warn Qatar of the attack, but that it was too late. In Tuesday's White House briefing, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt was asked by reporters if there was tension between Trump and Netanyahu. Watch.
So is the president upset with Netanyahu now?
The president made his thoughts and concerns about this very clear, and he spoke again both to Prime Minister Netanyahu and also the Emir and the Prime Minister of Qatar after this attack.
Israel says it alone ordered and executed what it called a precise strike. But with American troops stationed in Qatar, and Qatar a key mediator in the Gaza war, the U.S. is left walking a diplomatic tightrope. A major test of President Trump's economic agenda is headed to the Supreme Court. The justices agreed Tuesday to hear arguments on whether Trump can use emergency powers to levy his most sweeping reciprocal tariffs. Lower courts have repeatedly struck them down, saying he overstepped his authority under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. The administration insists the law gives the president broad latitude to act on, quote, unusual and extraordinary threats, including trade deficits and the flow of fentanyl. The tariffs include a 10% baseline duty on nearly every country and even steeper reciprocal rates on U.S. trade partners. Donald Trump called it Liberation Day, saying the policy forces trade deals and levels the playing field with other countries who have placed high duties on American exports. Oral arguments are set for the first week of November. A federal judge has put the brakes on the Trump administration's attempt to oust Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook. For now, Cook will keep her seat on the Fed board. The administration accused her of mortgage fraud, but she's pushing back in court. Judge Gia Cobb, a Biden appointee, ruled that Cook made a strong showing that her removal violated the Federal Reserve Act, which only allows members to be fired for cause. The case is expected to move up the legal chain and could end up at the Supreme Court. The case also means Cook will be at the next policy meeting September 16th. A session President Trump is watching closely as he demands deep interest rate cuts. More than 4 years after a Miami, Florida condo collapsed, killing 98 people, federal investigators say they may finally know how it started. A preliminary report from the National Institute of Standards and Technology points to the pool deck at Champlain Towers South in Surfside. Investigators say signs of trouble emerged weeks before the June 2021 disaster, including water leaks, a stuck gate door, and a shift in supports. They now believe the pool deck began to give way more than 7 minutes before the 12-story building came down. But the lead investigator warns the structure had widespread problems in both design and construction, making it tough to pinpoint a single cause. This is still preliminary. The final report, expected by year's end, will determine what really brought down the tower and what lessons need to be learned. Finally this morning, a big about-face by Cracker Barrel. The company says it's pulling the plug on plans to modernize its restaurants after loyal customers revolted. The move follows a firestorm over the brand's new minimalist logo, which triggered weeks of backlash and wiped out as much as $200 million in market value for the restaurant chain. The remodels would have swapped out the chain's iconic country decor in exchange for a cleaner, contemporary look. But in a statement Tuesday, Cracker Barrel said, quote, "Your old country store is here to stay. The vintage Americana you love will always be here." So far, only 4 of its 660 locations are redesigned. The rest will stay exactly the way fans and customers remember. I guess you could say old is new again, or a lot of people are happy about Herschel. I don't know. That's all I got. All right, before we head out, here's what we're tracking today. At 10 this morning, staff will gather at the Pentagon to remember the lives lost there on 9/11. President Trump will take part in that observance. Later in Chicago, Attorney General Pam Bondi and HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. team up for an announcement on illegal Chinese imports. At 3, the president is set to sign executive orders. Also something to note, Trump's federal takeover of Washington, D.C. ends today after a 30-day period where National Guard troops patrolled the city. The president called it a success, something he tried to prove last night by dining out at Joe's Seafood, Prime Steak, and Stone Crab, a block away from the White House. By the way, there's a lot of news out there. We sort through the chaos to get you the good stuff. Sign up for Unbiased Updates, our newsletter. Go to san.com/newsletters. Those are your Unbiased Updates for this Wednesday. We'll see you back here tomorrow. For all of us here at Straight Arrow News, I'm Craig DeGrelli. Have a great day.